Welcome to Mental Health Without Borders, the Global Wellness Podcast with Dr. Lindsay Frey, where we dive into the complexities of mental health from a global perspective, exploring how different cultures approach wellness and what we can learn from one another. This episode is sponsored by Finding Hope Wellness Center in Tampa, Florida, where individuals, families, and couples can go to receive hope and healing for their mental health. Go to www.findinghopewellnesscenter.com to find out more. Now let's get started. Today we are talking with Eleni Vardaki from Athens, Greece. Eleni holds a master's in education from Cambridge University and is a certified therapeutic coach specializing in EFT tapping. Her work centers on helping students, parents, and educators manage stress, anxiety, and transitions, particularly within international and multicultural contexts. She's especially passionate about supporting third culture kids, adult third culture kids, and expat families navigating identity and belonging. Welcome to Mental Health Without Borders.
Hi, thanks. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I am so excited to be talking to you today. And as we had kind of talked about a few minutes ago, I just recently returned from a trip to Greece and I absolutely loved it and highly recommend it for anybody who has not visited Greece. And you said you're from Athens, is that correct? Or you said from Central Greece?
Yeah, from Central Greece, but I'm based in Athens. I work online mostly, but I do sessions online, and I've got an in-person space here if people want to come in person in my private practice. But yeah, I'm based in Athens.
Can you share a little bit about your journey and what also inspired you to become a therapist?
Yeah, so in my previous career as a classroom teacher, I was seeing a rise of kids having meltdowns in tests and exams. And I was a secondary school teacher, middle school and high school, teaching history. And sometimes we'd invigilate exams. And I noticed that this was becoming more and more of an issue. The other thing I noticed as a trend over the last around 10, 15 years, was that more and more students were struggling with procrastination. And traditionally, schools have a position, their position is, well, anxiety, stress, that's like managing stress and anxiety. That's something that it's not our job. We're teachers, we're educators. That is therapist's job. But I was noticing that I was having success with my students in helping them manage their academic related stress and anxiety by integrating mindfulness and academic coaching, which included self-care habit coaching within the teaching curriculum, within the history classes that I was teaching. And year upon year, I was having above average success rates. Like students were doing, I was one of the higher performer teachers in the school. And so I went part-time and started offering one-to-one academic coaching, youth mentoring, academic coaching online. And I was working with a student who was preparing for exams, I tried everything that, all my toolbox from my teacher training, my master's in education, all my experience working with students, academic coaching skills. I tried everything that from a top down kind of cognitive intervention point of view that I felt that I knew that I could, try and see if it would help her. And she was stuck. And she was stuck in procrastination. And so because I'd started tapping when I needed it, when I was going through a healthcare challenge a couple of years prior, and I discovered tapping for self-regulation and emotional regulation and emotional processing. And I asked, would you be open to giving it a try a bottom-up somatic approach to identifying what's blocking her from overcoming her study procrastination so that she could start studying in time to be able to achieve the grades that she wanted to achieve. Because you can't just wing it and study kind of cram and leave it to the last minute when it's a challenging exam and still hope to get really good grades. And so she gave consent, the parent gave consent, and we gave it a go. And the block cleared so quickly. And it ends up that it was an emotional block. It was, and so she needed that somatic therapy, that therapeutic bottom-up intervention to identify the fear of failure that was behind the procrastination behavior. And when I saw the power that combining coaching skills and tapping skills can have for helping have a bigger impact for clients, I was like, I want to get certified in this. And so that's when I began my certification journey to become certified in EFT therapy, and I became an EFT practitioner.
Wow, that is quite a journey. I think that's fantastic. So from teaching to then teaching and academic coaching to then therapy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what I guess what's kind of different in terms of the way I work is that I start with where are we heading? What's the goal? What would you like to get out of the sessions? So there's very much a coaching framework approach to the EFT tapping therapy that I offer. And for me, that's something that I'm noticing. I don't know if you're seeing this in America, but here in Greece, there's that movement where the boundaries between just being a therapist and just being a coach are being challenged. Because it's coming from that place of, client-centered, person-centered, what's in the best interest of my clients. And also most people here in Greece will invest in someone who's working in private practice. So if they're paying money for this and it's not just on insurance, they want to see results. And
yes.
So it's good for business to see, well, what else can I learn? How can I expand my toolbox? And therapy's really valuable, but it can sometimes get stuck in that, if you don't have that coaching aspect with regards to helping clients move forward and achieve goals. And then coaching is very valuable, but clients can get stuck if there's a block where we might need to go back into the past and do some emotional processing and emotional clearing from past wounds type of thing so that they can achieve their goal. So here in Greece, I'm seeing that there are coaches who are becoming certified in therapeutic modalities and vice versa, therapists who are getting upskilling in coaching skills. And these two worlds are merging into kind of more therapeutic coaching combinations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm seeing that as well. I have some really good friends that have been merging the two and that are really, really happy with it. Some that are kind of stepping into coaching to help even coach therapy, other therapists and other wellness professionals, a little bit of something that I'm passionate about, but so that they can stay healthy in order to keep doing what they're doing. But it's more of a coaching type approach than like a therapeutic approach, like what you're saying, creating goals, discovering what the challenges are, what the blocks are, and helping them to move forward. Mm-hmm. And so for people that are not familiar with EFT, can you just explain what that is a little bit for anyone that's listening that doesn't know?
Yeah, so the EFT I'm referring to is emotional freedom techniques, which is different to the talk therapy, couples therapy, emotionally focused therapy. So it's also known as EFT tapping, and it's been around for 40 years. It's been researched for 20. There's loads of research meta-analyses proving its effectiveness for anxiety, PTSD. They've also done studies on sham points where you just tap on random acupressure points compared to the clinical EFT tapping points to see if is it placebo, is it what's going on, and they've shown that actually no, it isn't. It isn't placebo. It's the tapping points are the active ingredient. They are the most important factor in EFT. It's not just the words. It's not just, the setup statement. The words we use, we call it a setup statement to set up the tapping intervention. Sometimes schools will hire me to train their psychologists or their counselors in EFT for mental health first aid. Because I've seen kids having meltdowns and it taking them 20 minutes to recover from a panic attack in a test exam. And, school counselors aren't always trained in mental health, first aid, practical somatic tools. And breath work can be very triggering sometimes for someone who's having a panic attack if they feel like they can't breathe, because you're asking them to take a deep breath and bring awareness to the very part of their body that feels the most unsafe in that moment. And what I found is that tapping is a trauma-informed intervention for helping nip a panic attack in the bud. And so you'll have people recovering within 5 minutes. Kids will, will like nip a panic attack in the bud, and it will end after 5 minutes rather than 20. It cuts it down, the recovery time, and it prevents escalation. And so for me, that's huge that we've got these tools that we didn't have in schools. We didn't have access to these things. Right. And it's not like a school counselor can just go, like, here, take a benzodiazepine or take something that someone might prescribe to someone who's suffering from panic attacks as an adult, because there's ethical issues there. They're children. These are addictive substances. And so there's a real problem. There's a real pain point. There's a need. Like, what do you do when you've got students who are having panic attacks, and taking deep breaths isn't enough, for example, as a strategy to help them ground and come back to themselves.
Yeah, this is something that it sounds like I could benefit from going more into myself, and maybe I'll contact you for some coaching because, I do work with a lot of children and adolescents in my practice. And I would say the number one challenge that I'm seeing come into my office is anxiety, stress, and pressure. A lot of it related to school, a lot of it related to grades, sometimes athletics as well, but just a lot of stress and pressure on these young kiddos. And even last week, I think I had 2 or 3 kiddos come in that are having active panic attacks in school. So we were talking about practical ways to be able to help them while they're in school, to be able to get through it and know that they have tools to get through it. But this is one thing I'm not familiar with. And so it would be beneficial for even me to learn and to expand my toolbox, which is something that I just love so much about our field, is that it's consistently growing and expanding, and we're learning more. And like you said, we're kind of combining different areas to create a better and more well-rounded approach for anybody that we're able to talk with.
And something that I also want to I want to acknowledge is how I feel like America's leading the way, because these are tools that I've learned they're coming from, like Australia, England. The US is leading the way in the research on testing the effectiveness of tools like EFT tapping. And so, I was recently, because thanks to, this globalization now and the internet and so on, I was able to take part in the Psychotherapy Networker Symposium, this year's annual Psychotherapy Networker Symposium, which was broadcast worldwide. And so I was so impressed with exactly what you're modeling here, which is curiosity, openness to expanding your toolbox. And that's something that I feel that where Greece is at in terms of mental health care provision is something that we can as a country learn from you guys, because you are modeling that staying open, staying curious, growth mindset, lifelong learning to developing our toolbox. And I think there's a little bit more of a fixed mindset here of, I went to university 10, 20, 50 years ago, and that's it. Like, this is my approach, a bit more fixed and not so open to new ideas. And so I'm very grateful to America and to the US for leading in this space and modeling this, this openness and openness to learn from other countries, other cultures, but also to developing, as a profession, and that professionalism that I think also we could benefit from having, this sense of professionalism that you guys model.
Yeah, well, that's so good. And I agree. I think the new research and constantly adapting to what's happening and the changes, I think it's really important. And then, yes, personally, I've I've had my master's for 15 years, my doctorate for a little over 11 years, and things have changed so rapidly just in our culture, different things kiddos are facing, families, parents, that it almost feels like there is no choice. You really do need to adapt as quickly as the culture is adapting, the work that we're doing, so that we do stay relevant and current, and it's meaningful and impactful to the people that we're working with. And you're right. Not everybody's like that. Not everybody's like that here as well. I've encountered that too, or I've had clients encounter that and then come here and kind of talk about it. But I think it's important, for any professionals that are listening, I do think staying up into current research and new techniques is really important. And so you have mentioned a few times children, adolescents. Are you still working with children, adolescents, or do you work with all ages in your own practice?
Yeah, I do work with all ages now, because I'm certified to be able to work with adults, and I found that another issue that we're facing here in Greece is the rise of stress-related aches and pains. So a lot of adults are experiencing psychosomatic, like lower back pain. Is a big one, but any kind of stress related aches and pains really, and so that's something that has been a presenting issue. People have come to me for EFT for, because it is a somatic intervention, so it helps reduce that stress, and when we reduce stress, it helps reduce our experience of pain by reducing the cortisol levels in our body. And so I work even with adults all the way up to age 89 is the oldest client I've had.
Okay. Oh, that's really great. And I think it's so important for people to understand the mind-body connection. I think we understand that as far as stress, but understanding that as far as wellness practices as well, and helping yourself be well, is really important. And so have you seen mental health and therapy evolve in Greece over time since you've been there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say that in the last 10 years, Dr. Vessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps a Score, has had a big impact because it was translated into Greek. And so Greeks who might not otherwise be able to access it are now able to read it. It's in all major bookstores here. Other books have been translated into Greek on how to use tapping for self-help. And so those are also available in bookstores. So because we're having, a book Bruce Lipton's book on the new biology. So people are now, more and more people are educating themselves. That's been translated into Greek, on the mind-body connection and how our beliefs can affect our biology and the link to epigenetics. And so I think what gets people excited who come to me for EFT as well is that we now have research that shows that even 1 hour of EFT changes how genes express epigenetically. So it has an impact not just on reducing cortisol levels, but there's another biomarker that they've tested, and we've got 2 studies that show it, that it has an impact on our genes. It impacts genes including our immune system, memory function, which is very useful for learning and students. So there was one study that found 72 genes expressed differently after 1 hour of EFT therapy.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. And then there's research that shows that it helps with restructuring the brain. So with neuroplasticity, that when you do interventions for chronic pain, the brain in an fMRI scan of participants in the research studies who, before EFT and after EFT, their brain no longer resembled the brain of someone with chronic pain. It returned to what you would expect from a brain of someone who isn't experiencing chronic pain after an intervention of EFT sessions. So I think that because people are quite kind of skeptical going in, they're like, what is this? Acupressure points. There's some people who are very much like, they kind of think, oh, is this just like Asian kind of medicine? I don't know, the work of the devil. Some people think when they think of yoga or something, so they think religious,
Mm.
and so they can feel threatened if they're very Greek Orthodox. What this research is showing is that actually, like this is an approach that helps you somatically, emotionally, and they don't feel threatened. Their religious beliefs don't feel threatened, and I think that that's where the researchers come in helping get buy-in from people
Mm-hmm.
who are trying this.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's really important. And I understand, something that you've been kind of raised to think one way, and trying to shift that based on something that's deeply, deeply important and personal to you, I think it can be challenging. So I'm glad that the research is going in that direction. And I'm wondering, just as you're talking about it, I have seen the mental health stigma kind of reduce over time, but yet there still is. And I'm wondering what that's like in Greece. Have you seen it change? And are you still seeing people hesitant towards using therapy or therapy services? And
Yeah. I actually am seeing people still hesitant because Greece is a very conservative society. It's a bit
mm,
like the Middle East, and there's certain cultures where they're quite conservative, and I think there's a lot of people don't know. They don't know what they don't know, and when you don't
yes,
know, you have these beliefs that they'll kind of assume that people who go to therapy are, and this isn't sadly the word that many people use who aren't aware. I don't want to use the word ignorant because it sounds like it's judgmental, but they don't have knowledge. They don't have
yes,
they don't have the
mm-hmm.
knowledge. They'll use the word crazy. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not crazy, I'm fine, you go.
mm-hmm.
Like, and it can actually almost be that can sometimes be passed on to the child, like, you have to go to therapy, and it's like almost like a punishment because
Yes,
that's what crazy people do, and like you're just so a child being emotionally dysregulated and having a meltdown is shamed, and now they're feeling ashamed and they have resistance to going to see a therapist.
mm-hmm.
And so I think that we still have a way to go there. You tend to see this more in rural parts of Greece, in Athens.
Mm-hmm.
There's more information, there's more people are educating themselves a bit more. It's a capital city, ideas flow more, there's more workshops, there's more access to experiences. So they're starting, as the people's knowledge increases, that stigma is reducing. But I'm definitely seeing, I think, a difference between Athens, the capital city, and rural countryside, where you still have some farmer communities or people who might not be as aware. And so
Mm-hmm.
there, the stigma can be so great that people will do online therapy to not be seen walking into a building where they'll be identified as seeing a therapist.
Mm-hmm. And so I wonder, because of that, have you found that people might be more open to coaching, or even more excited about online therapy options?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I definitely have seen a rise in openness towards that, and that's something that the government has also been promoting, saying, that like we have people in institutions who are saying, getting funding for the government, for example, to help areas that don't have access, either because they don't have a therapist locally, because they're kind of isolated islands,
Mm.
and the population isn't. They don't have enough of a population there to have a therapist there, kind of thing.
Yes.
And also a way of they will say, you don't have to. So government funded psychologists will tell people you don't have to come in person. You can do online if that would feel more comfortable. Because in villages and in the countryside, everyone knows everyone. So
Mm.
everyone's like, oh, I saw you go there. I saw you here. I saw you, what have you. And so it can be a huge deterrent. Whereas online therapy has freed them up to get support, which previously they wouldn't be able to, out of
Mm.
fear of feeling ashamed if someone sees
Mm-hmm.
walking in to a
Mm-hmm.
place that they
This
don't.
is probably one of the first time I've really thought about that. I know that a lot of the therapists that I've been speaking to, and a lot of people that I know in my area, do kind of a combination of virtual and in-person therapy. But I really didn't think about that being an avenue for people that were worried still about the stigma, where they wouldn't have to be seen maybe walking into a building. They would just be able to meet with their therapist privately, confidentially, and be able to receive help that way. So it's really important that that's been an amazing avenue for us. It's really opened up the world and opened up options for a lot of people to get help, which is great. And as we're kind of speaking about it, if you could change one thing, about global mental health treatment, what do you think that would be? Even if you could just speak to Greece, if there's something that you think that you would change.
Yeah. I mean, something that's been heartbreaking for me has been the rise of benzodiazepines being prescribed for people who are not mentally ill without their consent, full informed consent. So we've had a huge rise in Xanax, the benzotyping, the main one that's subscribed here in Greece, in the last 5 years. And you'll speak to people and they'll say, I'm taking it because I had trouble sleeping. And they don't know that it's a psychiatric medication. They don't know, they weren't informed that this is something that is not just for sleeping pill, which is what it's become known with. Oh, it will help you sleep. But there's people who've gone to a psychiatrist and they've told them, you're not clinically depressed, but if you don't improve your sleep, you will become depressed. Here, take this benzodiazepine. And so for something that has such serious consequences that can be so addictive.
Yes.
For me, that's really sad. And it's sad because also on social media, on TikTok, there's videos that trend, and it's this huge trend, they're really huge engagement with people joking about how they need benzodiazepine to sleep, and they need the Xanax to be able to function and go to work every single day. And this isn't for me a laughing matter, because the long-term consequences can be very severe for something that sleep and insomnia. You can have one session. I've worked with adults where we might need a little bit more than one session, but especially teenagers, within one session, you can clear that, reduce the stress and help them improve their sleep. It's a very it's not a complex problem to resolve. And for such a big intervention with such potentially serious long-term consequences to be delivered, I'm not against psychiatric medication at all. It's the thing that I would hope would change in the future is maybe a more ethical approach to when these medications are being prescribed, so that it's when someone actually has, a serious mental illness, not for something like, I can't sleep and it's been 2 weeks and I'm struggling to sleep.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think that, as we're talking about it, it is so interconnected a lot of times with our mental health and our wellness, but also something that can be shifted and changed just based on habits that someone can do, based on techniques that they can learn. Just like you said, I am regularly talking to a lot of my clients and my parents. I work a lot with adolescents, and I work with adults too, where we talk about their habits and patterns around activity, getting outside, sleep, nutrition, and how if these things are in line and you're doing them well, you will feel better. If these things are not in line and you have mental health challenges, they could make them worse. So one of the very first line of treatment approaches that I take is, session 1 or session 2, we're talking about your sleep, we're talking about your nutrition, and we're talking about your activity. And then we're going to talk about interventions a little bit down the road, but let's work on that first. But most particularly if they come in asking about, should I see a psychiatrist for medication? Because I don't do medication or refer out for medication. And those are the questions that I ask first. Well, are they sleeping? Are they getting outside? Are they doing XYZ? Because those things can make a significant difference in our mental health and our wellness and our feeling well, as opposed to taking a medication, like you said, for a longer period of time that could also have negative consequences attached. These do not.
Exactly. And it's interesting because I'm also seeing that when teenagers, for example, and adults come in with or experiencing anxiety, one of the first things I see is sleep, and 9 times out of 10, their sleep is out of whack. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so doing some tapping on, any, whether it might be fear that they won't be able to go to sleep if they've got insomnia, or it might be resistance to sleeping. And often what we then see is they've got a habit of being on their phone and scrolling until late at night. That then eats into their sleep. And so we tap on, any resistance they might be to changing that habit so that they can gain an hour or two of that time back, and then they can sleep during that time rather than being on their phone, and wake up feeling refreshed and with less anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I hope people are listening and taking note for those 9 out of 10 people that might have sleep challenges. I hear it all the time. Sleep is so important. We all need rest. Our brains need rest. Our bodies need rest. And kind of shifting to wellness, it's really important as givers, it's really important as helping professionals to also take care of our mental wellness. So how do you maintain your mental wellness while also helping other people?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. One is I try to keep a gap of 30 minutes between sessions. When I would do kind of more back-to-back scheduling of sessions, I would notice that I would then start to feel overwhelmed, and I would start to get dysregulated, and it wasn't fair on the next client starting a session without a chance for me to regulate myself and meet my needs, so that I could show up the way that I wanted to show up. And so that's the first thing that has really been a game changer. The second thing is that I have a commitment to doing my own work. So I do EFT therapy with other EFT, like fellow EFT practitioners, for my own work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've kept up ever since I became certified. At least sometimes it depends on what I'm going through. It might be once a week, it might be once every 2 weeks, or it might be once a month, but it's a regular part of my self-care practice, is doing my own work. And then the third thing is I don't go it alone. I commit to taking more complex cases to my EFT supervisor, and that also gives me peace of mind, because then I'm not, I'm not alone. I've never felt that kind of, sometimes therapists will talk about how like they can feel alone in what they're doing, but I don't feel that, because I have that support and I have that guidance when I need it. And so that gives me peace of mind. And yeah, so I'd say those were probably my top three in terms of professional self-care. And then exercise, walking is so important. I don't like running, so I've stopped trying to force myself to do that. And I focus on things that give me pleasure and are fun. So I like jump rope. I enjoy fruit and vegetables, and so I make time to have some of those healthy meals that are also more enjoyable to me than junk food that just doesn't feel good. I feel kind of, might feel a little bit, it might feel good a little initially, but then you kind of crash afterwards. So yeah, so I'll have a bit more kind of, cakes, processed sugars on like Easter, Christmas, what have you, when it's like certain festivities. But I notice afterwards that it does take a toll. You'll feel a bit more down. It affects my well-being. Whereas, but I make time for it, because also I think it's important to have that balance. But overall, like I'll course correct afterwards and be like, okay, now like we're going to focus on things that, your body needs to nourish your body. Because I think that also, like you said, plays a huge role. Going out for a walk, what we put in our bodies, the food we consume. So that's something that I'm also practicing, and trying to be mindful of.
Those are really, really important and really great tips too. I love the kind of professional wellness of having gaps between sessions. It's not necessarily how we're trained. It's back to back to back with maybe 5 or 10 minutes in between to kind of squeeze in. But having that 30 minutes, I can imagine would make a big difference throughout the day, and to be able to sustain your mental energy and your wellness. Commitment to doing your own work. A lot of therapists are committing to that. And I think it's important for people to hear that as well, that even with therapists, meeting with coaches, meeting with other therapists to make sure that they're mentally well, like a checkup or a tune in, or like kind of tuning things in. I think that's really important. Also having support is really incredibly important. And then your personal self-care, really practicing what you're talking about, putting these things in action and taking care of your mind and your body as well. So that's fantastic. So hopefully you continue to do what you do for a really long period of time. We need people like you out there doing this work, especially in Greece. I hope that people come to visit Greece. Like I said, I was there recently. It was lovely. It's such a great place. I wonder if I went to a couple different islands, but there's so many different islands. Do you have a favorite place that you either like to go or that you've vacationed out there?
Oh gosh, it's so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I just love so many islands.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard. Milos is a lovely island.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on if you go off season or not. Some of these
Yes.
islands, like Lefkada, is lovely, but if you go when it's kind of peak season, you might not be able to have as much access to the beach. It might be a bit more
Mm-hmm.
crowded. So I like to go to the popular islands like Lefkada, kind of off season, or when it's not as busy, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then quieter islands when it's kind of more peak season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ones that maybe people haven't heard about, like in a
Like,
touristy way. So,
yeah, like
that's really great.
Adonissos, one they might not have heard of, Skopelos, one they might not have heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that kind of like a bit quieter islands, kind of in peak
Mm-hmm.
season.
Yes, it's almost like, why would you need to go anywhere else? You have all these different options and places to go for your own wellness and self-care and taking care of yourself, vacations. I'm going to have some places where people can find you online at the bottom of the show notes, so that if they want to follow your journey, or if they wanted to learn more from you, if you have demonstrations of tapping, these kind of things, and they would be able to see it and find you. But thank you so much for coming on today and meeting with me. This has been an amazing wealth of information that I've gathered from you, things that I've learned that I'm taking away, some books that I wrote down too that I want to look into. I have heard about The Body Keeps the Score, but I've never read it. So because this is probably the second or third time I've heard about it, I probably need to get it and read it myself. But thank you so much for your time and coming on here today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And so thank you, everybody who's listening, for joining me on Mental Health Without Borders. It's been an incredible conversation today, and I hope that you found some valuable insights to also take with you. So remember that no matter where you are in the world or where you come from, your mental wellness truly matters. So be patient with yourself, take time for your well-being, and never forget that seeking help is a sign of strength. Be kind to yourself, and I look forward to connecting with you next time on Mental Health Without Borders.